Now we begin with NFL kicker Harrison Butker's commencement address that's ignited a national debate about religious beliefs and free speech. Harrison Butker is a three-time Super Bowl champion kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's now being attacked for his commencement speech at a small private Catholic college in Kansas. His now viral address promoted his faith, his pro-life stance, and his conservative views on marriage. Watch.
I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. I am certain the reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. To the gentlemen here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy.
Kayleigh, what do you make of that?
You know, a lot has been made of his comments about women, which I found to be absolutely spot on. I'm a working mom. I've had a job at the height of politics. I have a job now at the height of television. That's not my best job in life. My best job in life is being a mother, is the things I do at home. Beautiful words about his wife. But while a lot has been made of those comments, people ignore the other 19 minutes of the speech. I listened to all 20 minutes on my way in, and I was blown away. This was the best graduation speech that I have ever heard in my entire life. He talks a lot about Christianity. He says the world wants you to hide this away. The world wants Christians to be harmless. But he said, we are in mission territory in a post-God world. Stop and think about that. So many of the problems that we talk about here on the couch, the crime out on the streets, the kids that, abortion till birth, which we talk about in some states, these stem from a culture that doesn't respect life, that doesn't respect faith. We live in a post-God world, and what he said is truth. And you know what? The NFL, for them to come out, their senior vice president and chief diversity and inclusion officer, comes out and says he gave a speech in his personal capacity. His views are not those of the NFL. His views are the vast majority of those who watch the NFL, good, hardworking Americans, many of whom go to church, many of whom are faith-filled. How dare you say that? But here's the thing. People recognize truth. We live in a very dark time. And when someone speaks life and when someone speaks truth, not from a place of anger, but a place of compassion, and that's exactly what he did, what happens? 1 million views just on the YouTube channel of the school, just on the YouTube channel of the school. Best-selling jersey of the week, among the top best-selling jerseys. People recognize truth. You go, Harris Butker. You're living in for such a time as this moment, and it is awesome to watch.
Lisa.
So I have a lot of different viewpoints on this, so I'll try to articulate them, correctly. Look, I think what he said was brave in the sense that it's counterculture. I mean, you look at the left, they think they're brave when they say things, they criticize Trump, they cheer on abortion to a clapping room of people who agree with him. What he said was brave because it's counterculture. I think that it's being overblown in all different directions in the sense of I didn't hear, I read through the transcript and I didn't take it as he is saying a woman's only place is in the kitchen or is at home. That's not what he said. I read it as more of him praising his wife and recognizing her hard work as a mother and a wife. And I think he's going to be just fine because you have the Kansas City Chiefs, the owner's wife, putting out a statement saying that affirming motherhood and praising your wife is not bigoted. So I think he's going to be okay with his role on the team, though. I will say that, the Bible does lay out how God uses people in all different walks of life, right? He uses sinners, he uses saints, he uses women without children, he uses women with children. I mean, Sarah gave birth at 90, which is probably pushing it, even in today's society. So, I think people are sort of projecting their own belief system and their own views on marriage and kids onto him when he was tasked with giving a commencement speech and imparting his own wisdom onto students. And I think there was a lot of wisdom in the things that he said. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. Okay. Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay, all right.
We're just all listening intently.
I know. I was trying to lay it out, but I had a bunch of different thoughts, and some of them were slightly conflicting.
I like that.
Okay, all right. We're okay.
I think if you're offended by this and you weren't sitting in that audience, he wasn't talking to you to begin with. He didn't say all women. He didn't say American women. He spoke specifically to Catholics in America. I listened to all 20 minutes of this 3 times over. This was a speech about Catholics, their role in society, and their role within their church. The first people that he went after were the leaders of the Catholic Church. The second people, and I say went after, offered his reflections on what they're doing right and wrong, trying to be politicians and popular instead of those of piety and discipline. Then he went after men. And this is what he said about men, and I think this is amazing to me that none of this was brought up. He said right after talking about absent fathers, he said, be unapologetic in your masculinity, fight against the cultural emasculation of men, do hard things, never settle for what is easy. That's not about UFC and guns and football and going to the gym. That's about being the providers and protectors that we have the specific tools to do. Masculinity in its best form is not loud and bombastic and shaved on the side of the heads and tattoos and all this. Masculinity is accepting your role as the stoic figure within a household or a family to provide and protect those who know how to nurture and do things that we're not as good at. He talked about the failures of men in society, and all of this was under one specific word, not occupation, not profession, vocation, a word that's rooted in Christianity. He talked about his vocation in life is that as a father and a husband, not a kicker on an NFL team.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, he said, don't let football and business get in the way of him performing his vocation. Amen. So this idea that he was misogynistic or attacking women or going after women, I never heard him say that there aren't options, that there aren't multiple options for the women in this country. What I heard him say is that if you are Catholic, and you should be wanting to get married and have kids, and he believes that, the Catholic Church believes that. I don't know that, I'm not Catholic, so I can hear arguments against it. But, in this country, heck, the man and the woman have to work because we can't afford to live off. You can't afford to have a homemaker. So, I mean, I'm sure he understands that. I don't see anyone arguing against that or him arguing against it. I think that 3 minutes of a 20-minute speech became very effective in a tit-for-tat political argument, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's critical to talk about who this offended. The NFL is not being genuine. They're ingenuous. In fact, they're lying when they say it doesn't meet their standards or, that it violates whatever they said. Damar Hamlin nearly died on the field. Well, he was dead for a few seconds. They brought him back to life, was what the reports have been. Everybody was kneeling and praying. In fact, ESPN anchors are saying, oh, my gosh, and everybody across the country, and there were videos of news anchors and people all over praying for Damar Hamlin. I didn't see the NFL put out a statement then about how it doesn't fit whatever their policies are. Yeah. Religion, it went too far. I didn't see it then. They're being disingenuous. Maybe they're just jealous because they didn't come up with it. But look, the city of Kansas City is going to struggle now because the city, according to the mayor, and now the AG is looking into whether or not the city doxed, put out personal information to find the home of Harrison Butker. Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas has responded on X to a message that was deleted on the city's Twitter account. He says, a message appeared earlier this evening from a city public account. The message was clearly inappropriate for a public account. The city has correctly apologized for the error. will review account access and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, what it said had a typo in it. It says, I apologize. Somebody didn't even care enough to put the word down right, I apologize. And you know, so we apologize for our previous tweet. It was shared in error. No, it wasn't. No. You typed out what you thought you could do and told where Harrison Butker lived.
Yeah.
That is not an accident. I was so shocked by that. I'm glad that Attorney General Bailey in Kansas is going to look into this. But the NFL needs to clean up, too. You know you believe something in faith. Everybody was praying for Damar Hamlin, and you were silent. How is this different? Harrison Butker, by the way, is pivotal to those 3 Super Bowls. Those seasons were some of the best in Kansas City history, leading up to and including. God bless him, and he is brave, Lisa.
Yes.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.